Hi boys and girls, and welcome back to another edition of Snack Time with a Dollop of Read Aloud. We're going to continue our read aloud of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone with permission granted by Scholastic Book Publishing for me to be able to share this book with you. Oh, and the book was written by J.K. Rowling. Okay, so in our last chapter that we read together, we discovered that Harry Potter, though he was at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, really found a replacement for the boy that he was trying his hardest to get away from. That boy was Dudley. Now, several of you have commented and shared your thoughts about how Dudley and Malfoy were exactly the same, how Dudley and Malfoy really just were kind of there to torment and bother Harry. But a lot of you also thought that now that Harry has a group of friends, or at least for right now, one clear friend, which was Ron, you thought that he would be able to weather the bullying a little bit better. Now, some of you did ask a question, will Malfoy learn his lesson or will Dudley learn their lesson? And that's just going to have to be a question that you find out or you answer for yourself in the next series of books. Remember, there's 7 books in all in the Harry Potter series, so this is just the first one. There's 6 more for you to enjoy. Okay, so let's get into our reading, which is chapter 10, Halloween. Now, if you see this guy, that is a little bit of a hint as to what might be happening on this Halloween night at Hogwarts. Which I have to say, if Halloween was like this in real life, and not just in Hogwarts and in J.K. Rowling's mind, then I might be a fan of Halloween. But as you know, Halloween is not my favorite holiday, but it's definitely magical in Hogwarts. All right, here we go. Malfoy couldn't believe his eyes when he saw that Harry and Ron were still at Hogwarts the next day, looking tired but perfectly cheerful. Indeed, by the next morning, Harry and Ron thought that meeting the three-headed dog had been an excellent adventure, and they were quite keen to have another one. In the meantime, Harry filled Ron in about the package that seemed to have been from Gringotts, or removed from Gringotts and brought to Hogwarts, and they spent a lot of time wondering what could possibly need such heavy protection. It's either really valuable or really dangerous, Ron thought. Or both, Harry worried. But as all they knew for sure about the mysterious object was that it was about 2 inches long. They didn't have much chance of guessing what it was without further clues. Neither Hermione or Neville showed the slightest bit of interest in what lay beneath the dog or the trapdoor. All Neville cared about was never going near that dog again. Hermione was now refusing to speak to Ron, but she was such a bossy know-it-all that they saw this as an added bonus. All they really wanted now was a way of getting back at Malfoy. And to their great delight, just such a thing arrived in the mail later that week. As owls flooded into the great hall as usual, everyone's attention was caught at once by a long, thin package carried by 6 owls. Harry was just as interested as everyone else to see what was in that large parcel, and was amazed when the owl soared and dropped it right in front of him, knocking his bacon onto the floor. They had hardly fluttered out of the way when another owl dropped a letter on top of the parcel. Harry ripped open the letter first, which was lucky because it said, "Do not open the parcel at the table. It contains your new Nimbus 2000, but I don't want everyone knowing you've got a broomstick or they'll all want one. Oliver Wood will meet you tonight on the Quidditch field at 7 for your first official Quidditch training session. Professor McGonagall." Harry had difficulty hiding his glee as he handed the note to Ron to read. "A Nimbus 2000, Ron moaned enviously. "I've never even touched one." They left the hall quickly, wanting to unwrap the broomstick in private before their first class, but halfway across the entrance hall, they found that the upstairs was barred by Crabbe and Goyle. Malfoy seized the package from Harry and felt it. "That's a broomstick," he said, throwing it back at Harry with a mixture of jealousy and spite on his face. "You'll be in for it this time, Potter. First years aren't allowed to have them." Ron couldn't resist. "It's not any broomstick," Ron said. "It's a Nimbus 2000. "What did you say you had at home?" "A Comet 260? Ron grinned at Harry. "Comets look flashy, but they're not even in the same league as a Nimbus 2000. "What would you know about it, Weasley? You couldn't afford half the handle." Malfoy snapped back. "I suppose you and your brothers would have to save up twig by twig." Before Ron could answer, Professor Flitwick appeared at Malfoy's elbow. "Not arguing, I hope, boys," he squeaked. "Potter's been sent a broomstick, Professor," said Malfoy quickly. Yes, that's right," said Professor Flitwick, beaming at Harry. "Professor McGonagall told me all about the special circumstances, Potter. What model might it be?" "A Nimbus 2000, sir," said Harry, fighting not to laugh at the look of horror all over Malfoy's face. "And it's really thanks to Malfoy here that I even got it," he added. Harry and Ron headed upstairs, smothering their laughter at Malfoy's obvious rage and discontent. "Well, it's true," Harry chortled as they reached the top of the marble staircase. "If he hadn't stolen Neville's Remembrall, I wouldn't be on the team at all." "So you suppose you think that's a reward for breaking the rules?" came an angry voice from behind them. Hermione was stomping up the stairs, looking very disapprovingly at the package in Harry's hand. "I thought you weren't speaking to us," Harry said. "Yes, but don't stop now," said Ron. "It's doing us so much good." Hermione marched away with her nose in the air. Harry had a lot of trouble keeping his mind on his lessons that day. It kept wandering up to the dormitory where his new broomstick was lying under his bed, or straying off to the Quidditch field where he'd be learning to play that night. He bolted his dinner that evening without noticing what he was even eating, and then rushed upstairs with Ron to unwrap the Nimbus 2000 at last. "Wow!" Ron sighed as the broomstick rolled onto Harry's bed. Even Harry, who knew truthfully nothing about broomsticks, thought it looked wonderful. Sleek and shiny, with a mahogany handle, and it had a long tail of neat, straight twigs, and Nimbus 2000 written in gold near the top. As 7 o'clock drew near, Harry left the castle and set off in the dusk towards the Quidditch field. He had never been inside the stadium before. Hundreds of seats were raised in stands around the field so that spectators were high enough to keep up with the action. At either end of the field were 3 golden poles with hoops at the end. They reminded Harry of the little plastic sticks Muggle children blew bubbles through, except that they were 50 feet high. Too eager to fly again and wait for Wood, Harry mounted his broomstick and kicked off the ground. What a feeling! He swooped in and out of the goalposts and then sped up and down the length of the field. The Nimbus 2000 turned wherever he wanted it to with the slightest of touch. "Hey, Potter, come down!" Oliver Wood had arrived. He was carrying a large wooden crate under his arm. Harry landed next to him. "Very nice," said Wood, his eyes glinting. "I see what McGonagall meant. You really are a natural. I'm going to teach you the rules this evening, and then you'll be joining the team practice 3 times a week." He opened the crate, and inside were 4 different sized balls. "Right," said Wood. "Now, Quidditch is easy enough to understand, even if it's not too easy to play. There are 7 players on each side. 3 of them are called chasers. 3 chasers," Harry repeated as Wood took out the bright red ball about the size of a soccer ball. "This ball is called a quaffle," said Wood. The chasers throw the quaffle to each other and try to get it through one of the hoops to score a goal. 10 points every time the quaffle goes through one of the hoops. Are you following me? Chasers throw the quaffle and put it through the hoops to score. So that's sort of like basketball, right? But on broomsticks and 6 hoops instead of 2. What's basketball? Asked Wood. Never mind, said Harry quickly. Now, there's another ball on each side who's called the There's another player on each side who's called the keeper. I'm the keeper for Gryffindor. I have to fly around the hoops and stop any balls from going in them. Oh, 3 chasers, 1 keeper, and the ball, and they play with a quaffle. Okay, got that. So what are they for? He pointed at the 3 balls left inside the box. I'll show you now, said Wood. Take this. He handed Harry a small club. It looked a little bit like a short baseball bat. I'm going to show you what the bludgers do, Wood said. These are 2 bludgers. He showed Harry 2 identical balls, jet black and slightly smaller than the red quaffle. Harry noticed that they seemed to be straining to escape the straps holding them inside the box. Stand back, Wood said, or Wood warned Harry. He bent down and freed one of the bludgers. At once, the black ball rose high in the air and pelted straight at Harry's face. Harry swung at it with the bat to stop it from breaking his nose, and it sent it zigzagging through the air. It zoomed around their heads and then shot at Wood, who dove on top of it and managed to pin it to the ground. See? Wood panted, forcing the struggling bludger back into the crate and strapped it down safely. The bludgers rocketed around, trying to knock players off their brooms. That's why you have 2 beaters on each side. The Weasley twins are ours. It's their job to protect our side from the bludgers and try to knock them towards the other team. So, you think you've gotten all that? 3 chasers try and score with a quaffle. Keeper guards the goalpost. Beaters beat the bludgers away from our team. Very good, said Wood. Have the bludgers ever killed anyone? Harry asked, hoping that he sounded unconcerned. Let's see. Never at Hogwarts. We've had a couple of broken jaws, but nothing worse than that. Now, the last member of the team is the Seeker. That's you, Harry. And you don't have to worry about the quaffle or the bludgers, unless they crack my head open. Well, don't worry. The Weasleys are more than a match for the bludgers. I mean, they're like a pair of human bludgers themselves. Wood reached into the crate and took out the 4th and last ball. Compared with the quaffle and the bludger, it was tiny, about the size of a walnut. And it was bright gold, and it had fluttering silver wings. This, said Wood, is the golden snitch, and it's the most important ball of the lot. It's very hard to catch because it's so fast and truly difficult to see. It's the Seeker's job to catch it. You have to weave in and out of the chasers, the bludgers, the keepers, the beaters, the quaffles, and before the other team's Seeker finds it. Just know that whichever team's Seeker catches the snitch wins their team an extra 150 points. So they always nearly win. That's why Seekers get fouled so much. A game of Quidditch only ends when the snitch is caught. So it can go on for ages. I think the record for one game is 3 months. They had to keep bringing on substitute players so the other players could get some sleep. Well, that's it. Any questions? Harry shook his head. He understood what he had to do, all right. It was doing it that was going to be the problem. We won't practice with the snitch yet, said Wood carefully, shutting it back inside the crate. It's too dark. We might lose it. Let's try out a few of these. He pulled out a bag of ordinary golf balls out of his pocket, and a few minutes later he and Harry were up in the air, Wood throwing the golf balls as hard as he could in every direction for Harry to catch. Harry didn't miss a single one, and Wood was delighted. After half an hour, night had already fallen, and they couldn't carry on. The Quidditch Cup will have our name on it for this year for sure, said Wood happily as they trudged back up to the castle. I won't be surprised if you turn out better than Charlie Weasley, and he could have played for England if he hadn't gone after dragons. Perhaps it was because he was so busy, what with Quidditch being 3 evenings a week on top of all of his homework, but Harry could hardly believe it when he realized that he had already been in Hogwarts for 2 whole months. The castle felt more like a home than Privet Drive ever had. His lessons, too, were becoming more and more interesting now that they had mastered the basics. On Halloween morning, they woke to the delicious smell of baking pumpkin wafting through the corridors. Even better, Professor Flitwick announced in charms that he thought they were ready to start making objects fly. Something that they had all been dying to try since they had seen him make Neville's toad zoom around the classroom. Professor Flitwick put the class into pairs to practice. Harry's partner was Seamus Finnegan, which was a relief because Neville had been trying to catch his eye. Ron, however, would be working with Hermione Granger. It was hard to tell whether Ron or Hermione was angrier about this. She hadn't spoken to either of them since the day Harry's broomstick had arrived. Now, don't forget that nice wrist movement we've been practicing, squeaked Professor Flitwick. Swish and flick. Remember, swish and flick. And saying the magic words properly is very important too. Never forget, Wizard Barufio. Who said S's instead of F's and found himself on the floor with a buffalo on his chest. It was very difficult. Harry and Seamus swished and flicked, but the feather they were supposed to be sending skyward lay flat on their desktop. Seamus got so impatient that he prodded it with his wand and set it on fire. Harry had to put it out with his hat. Ron at the next table wasn't having much luck. Wingardium Leviosa, he shouted, waving his arm like a windmill. You're saying it wrong, Harry heard Hermione snap. It's Wingardium Leviosa. Make the gar nice and long. Well, you do it then if you're so clever, Ron snarled. Hermione rolled up her sleeve of her gown, flicked her wand, and said, Wingardium Leviosa. The feather rose off the desk and hovered 4 feet over their head. Oh, well done, cried Professor Flitwick, clapping. Everyone, see here! Miss Granger's done it. Well, Ron was in a very mood by the end of class, if you could imagine. It's no wonder no one can stand her, he said to Harry as they pushed their way into the crowded corridor. She's a nightmare. Someone knocked into Harry as they hurried past him. It was Hermione. Harry caught a glimpse of her face and was startled to see that she was in tears. I think she heard you. So? She must have noticed she has no friends. Hermione didn't turn up for the next class and wasn't seen all afternoon. On their way down to the Great Hall for Halloween feast, Harry and Ron overheard Pavarti Patil telling her friend Lavender that Hermione was crying in the girls' bathroom and just wanted to be left alone. Ron still looked more awkward at this. But a moment later, they entered the Great Hall where the Halloween decorations put Hermione quickly out of their minds. 1,000 little bats fluttered from the walls and ceilings, while 1,000 more swooped over the tables in low black clouds, making the candles and the pumpkins stutter. The feast appeared suddenly on golden plates as if it was the start of term banquet. Harry was just helping himself to a baked potato when Professor Quirrell came sprinting into the hall. His turban askew and terror on his face, everyone stared as he reached Professor Dumbledore's chair, slumped against the table, and gasped, Troll! Troll in the dungeon! Thought you ought to know! He sank to the floor in a dead faint. There was an uproar. It took several purple firecracker explosions from the end of Dumbledore's wand to bring silence to the hall. Prefects, he rumbled, lead your houses back to the dormitories immediately. Percy was in his element. Follow me. Stick together, first years. No need to fear the troll if you follow my orders. Just stay close behind me now. Make way. First year's coming through. Excuse me, I'm a prefect. How could a troll get in? Harry asked as they climbed the stairs. Don't ask me. They're supposed to be really stupid, said Ron. Maybe Peeves let one in as a Halloween joke. They passed different rooms of people hurrying in different directions. As they jostled their way through a crowd of confused Hufflepuffs, Harry suddenly grabbed Ron's arm. Hermione! She doesn't know! What about her? She doesn't know about the troll. Ron bit his lip. All right. But Percy better not see us, or he'll send a letter home to my mom. Ducking down, they joined the Hufflepuffs, going the other direction. As they slipped down a deserted corridor and hurried off towards the girls' bathroom. They had just turned the corner when they heard quick footsteps behind them. Percy! Hissed Ron, pulling Harry behind a large stone griffin. Peering around it, however, they saw not Percy, but Snape. He crossed the corridor and disappeared from view. What's he doing? Harry whispered. Why isn't he down in the dungeons with the rest of the teachers? Search me. Quietly as possible, they crept along the first corridor after Snape's fading footsteps. He's heading for the third floor, Harry said, but Ron held his hand. Can you smell something? Harry sniffed, and a foul stench filled his nose, a mixture of old socks and the kind of public toilet that no one remembered to clean. Eesh. And then they heard it. A low grunting and a shuffling of footfalls of gigantic feet. Ron pointed at the end of the passage to the left. Something huge was moving towards them. They shrank into the shadows and watched as it emerged into a patch of moonlight. It was a horrible sight, 12 feet high, with skin a dull granite gray, and its great lumpy body like boulders, with its small head perched on top like a coconut. It had short legs, thick as tree trunks, with flat, horny feet. The smell coming from it was incredible. It was holding a huge wooden club, which dragged along the floor because its arms were just too long. The troll stopped next to a doorway and peered inside it. It waggled its ears, making up its tiny mind, and then slouched into another room. The key's in the lock, Harry muttered. We could lock him in. Good idea, said Ron nervously. They edged towards the open door, mouths dry, praying the troll wasn't about to come out of it. With one great leap, Harry managed to grab the key, slam the door and lock it. Yes! Flushed with their victory, they started to run back up the passage, but as they reached the corner, they heard something that made their hearts stop. A high, petrified scream. And it was coming from the chamber they had just chained up. Oh, no, said Ron, pale as the bloody Baron. That's the girls' bathroom. Hermione, they both said. It was the last thing they wanted to do, but what choice did they have? Wheeling around, they sprinted back to the door and turned the key, fumbling in their panic. Harry pulled the door open and they ran inside. Hermione Granger was shrinking against the wall shrinking against the wall opposite, looking as if she was about to faint. The troll was advancing on her, knocking the sinks off the wall as he went. Confuse it, Harry said desperately to Ron. Seizing a tap, he threw it as hard as he could against the wall. The troll stopped a few feet from Hermione. It lumbered around, blinking stupidly to see what had made the noise. Its mean little eyes saw Harry. It hesitated. Then it made for him instead of lifting its club as it went. Oi, pea-brain! Yelled Ron from the other side of the chamber. He threw a metal pipe at it. The troll didn't even seem to notice the pipe hitting his shoulder, but it heard the yell and paused again, turning its ugly snout towards Ron instead of Harry, giving him time to run around it. Come on! Run! Run! He yelled at Hermione, trying to pull her towards the door, but she couldn't move. She was still flat against the wall, her mouth open with horror. The shouting and the echoes seemed to be driving the troll berserk. It roared again and started towards Ron, who was nearest. and had no way to escape. Harry did something that was both very brave and very stupid. He took a great running jump and managed to fasten his arms around the troll's neck from behind. The troll couldn't feel Harry hanging there, but even a troll will notice if you stick a long bit of wood up its nose. And Harry's wand had still been in his hand when he jumped. It had gone straight up one of the troll's nostrils. Howling with pain, the troll twisted and flailed its club, with Harry clinging on for dear life. Any second, the troll was going to rip him off or catch him with a terrible blow with his club. Hermione had sunk to the floor in fright. Ron pulled out his own wand, not knowing what he was going to do. He heard himself cry the first spell that came to his mind, Wingardium Leviosa! The club flew suddenly out of the troll's hand, rose high up in the air, turning slowly, and it dropped with a sickening crack onto its owner's head. The troll swayed on the spot and then fell flat on his face with a thud that made the whole room tremble. Harry got to his feet. He was shaking and out of breath. Ron was standing there with his hand still raised, staring at what he had done. It was Hermione who spoke first. Is it dead? I don't think so. I think it's just knocked out. He bent down and pulled his wand out of the troll's nose. It was covered in a lumpy gray glue. Oh, said Ron. Troll boogers. He wiped it on the troll's trouser. A sudden slamming and loud footsteps made the three of them look up. They hadn't realized what a racket they had been making, but of course, someone downstairs must have heard all the crashes and the troll's roars. A moment later, Professor McGonagall had come bursting into the room, closely followed by Snape, with Quirrell bringing up the rear. Quirrell took one look at the troll, let out a faint whimper, and sat down on a toilet, clutching his heart. Snape bent down over the troll. Professor McGonagall was looking at Ron and Harry. Harry had never seen her look so angry. Her lips were white. Hopes of winning 50 points for Gryffindor quickly faded from Harry's mind. What on earth were you thinking? Professor McGonagall shrilly screamed, her voice full of cold fury. Harry looked at Ron, who was still standing with his wand in the air. You are lucky you weren't killed. Why aren't you in your dormitory with the rest of your class? Snape gave Harry a swift, piercing look. Harry looked at the floor and he wished Ron would just put his wand down. Then a small voice came from out of the shadows. Please, Professor McGonagall, they were looking for me. Miss Granger? Hermione had managed to get to her feet at last. I went looking for the troll. I thought I could deal with it on my own, because I've read so much about them already. Ron dropped his wand, and Hermione Granger telling a downright lie to a teacher, he was shocked. If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead right now. Harry stuck his wand up its nose, and Ron knocked it out with its own club. They didn't have time to come and fetch anyone. It was about to finish me off, I'm afraid to say, when they arrived. Harry and Ron tried to look as though the story wasn't completely new to them. Well, in that case, said Professor McGonagall, staring at the three of them. Miss Granger, you foolish little girl. How could you have been thinking of tackling a mountain troll on your own? Hermione hung her head. Harry was speechless. Hermione was the last person to do anything against the rules, and here she was, pretending that she had, just to get them out of trouble. It was as if Snape had started handing out sweets. Miss Granger, 5 points will be taken from Gryffindor for this. I'm very disappointed in you. If you're not hurt at all, you'd better be off to Gryffindor Tower immediately. Students are finishing their feasts in their houses. Hermione left. Professor McGonagall turned to Ron and Harry. Well, I still say you were completely lucky. But not many first years could have taken on a full-grown mountain troll. You even win Gryffindor 5 points. You each win Gryffindor 5 points. Professor Dumbledore will be informed of your events tonight. You may go." They hurried out of the chamber and didn't speak at all until they climbed two floors up. It was a relief to be away from the smell of the troll, quite apart from anything else. "We should have gotten more than 10 points," Ron grumbled. 5, you mean? Once she's taken away Hermione's. "Good of her to get us out of trouble like that, though," Ron admitted. "Mind you, we did save her." "She might not have needed saving if we hadn't locked the thing in with her, and we hadn't been so mean to her earlier in the day," Harry reminded him. They had reached the portrait of the First Lady. "Pig snout," they said, and entered. The common room was packed and noisy. Everyone was eating the food that had been sent up. Hermione, however, stood alone by the door waiting for them. There was a very embarrassed pause. Then, none of them looking at each other, they all said, "Thanks," and hurried off to make their plates. But from that moment on, Hermione Granger became their friend. There are some things you can't share without ending up liking each other. And knocking out a 12-foot mountain troll is one of those experiences. All right, so now that was that. That was chapter 10. I hope you enjoyed that. So now we're getting to see a little bit more about Harry's school experience. He's starting on the Quidditch team. He's now made another friend in Hermione, who they thought was just an annoying know-it-all, and now all of a sudden they realize that she really is someone who can be trusted, and she really is someone that will stick her neck out for them in order to keep them from getting in trouble, especially if they were trying to help her. Now, what I want you to do is think about a time in your life that maybe you thought someone was something and then found out they were something else. If you have an experience like that, please share it in the comments section down below. I'm also going to include a quick little clip of the mountain troll incident from the movie so that you can see it. There are some changes, as is every kind of clip that Mrs. Wills is showing you. There's a difference between the book and the actual movie, but it's still fun to kind of see and help envision what the troll might look like and what a boogie-filled wand looks like as well. Ew. Now, what I want you to know is that I miss you, that I love you, and I want you to stay safe. So please share your thinking. I can't wait to read your comments, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.